Hello, welcome to the Popcorn Counter at the Two Real Cinema Club. I'm James Ruzicka.
And I'm Andres Lorente.
And we kind of have ideas when we do the main pod that we kind of can't quite explore at the time. So we talk about them at the Popcorn Counter afterwards.
We eat a lot of popcorn.
We do eat a lot of popcorn. It plays havoc with my digestion.
Yeah.
I'm not a good person to be around after these Popcorn Counter conversations.
But the fake butter. The fake butter is almost as good as the fake advertisements.
Now, when we watched Strangers on a Train the other week, there's something that really jumped out at me, which is that the two sisters in that movie are called Anne and Barbara.
Yes.
And I am pretty sure, I'm confident that when they wrote the script for that movie, those characters were called A and B.
Yes.
And then they just kind of came up with calling them Anne and Barbara afterwards. Once I come up with that idea a few years ago, I feel like I see it all over the place.
What was Farley Granger's name? What was his character? Haynes. Guy, right?
Guy.
Because the other character is Bruno, right? B.
Bruno. It was a B.
Yeah.
So it should be. So there's like the A guy, and then there's the B guy.
Yeah.
And they called the A guy just Guy.
Makes sense, though.
Absolutely. It occurred to me about Nope, actually, that the character who runs the theme park is called Park, isn't he?
Oh.
And I wonder whether, they had this character who runs a theme park, so they just called him Park.
Oh,
and it was
good.
only later on when they were in later drafts of the script, they realized, God, that guy's Korean, isn't he?
Yeah.
Because his surname is Park.
Oh.
I wonder whether that came the other way around, that it was the Park that came first and then the kind of the background of the character afterwards.
Yeah.
George Lucas is a terrible one for this. I think this is my theory about how George came up with the characters' names for Star Wars.
Okay.
So for the robots, I think when he was writing the script, the robots were called just R1 and R2 for Robot 1 and Robot 2. And he came up with another name for the first robot, C-3PO.
Yeah.
But the second robot just stuck as R2.
R2.
He never thought, never had to think of another name. And the same way that Obi Wan Kenobi, he's like this old boy. I bet he was like Old Boy 1.
Oh.
When he was writing the script. So he'd just be OB1.
Oh.
Like in the margin there. OB1 says this. And then I'll come up with a name for him later. And then it turns out, he never came up with a name. So he's just Obi-Wan. That's what he stayed at for the rest of the movie.
Okay.
Or like Chewbacca. He's like one of those kind of like old hoary guys that you see kind of outside the store who like they sit in a rocking chair and they chew tobacco all the time. He's one of those guys who chews like bacca.
That makes sense.
Chewbacca
That's
guy.
good.
Oh yeah, that's it.
But wait, he's R2D2. What's the D?
Yeah, for copyright purposes, they had to make it slightly more sophisticated, I'm guessing.
Okay.
But all his friends call him R2. Am I right?
R2. Yeah, you're right. R2.
That's what his buddies call him.
Maybe his name was Arthur. R2 in Italian is Arthur.
R2. Yeah, that was certainly it. And like Han Solo was like, he's a guy who's like a bit of a loner.
Yeah.
He's like, he's handy with a gun, but he works on his own. He's
single-handed.
Handy solo guy. Yeah, I'll come up with a name for him later.
No, I think you're right. Star Wars definitely fits that kind of profiling.
But how do you come up with names for your characters?
Good question. Usually, I kind of use like what I want a physical description to be like in some places. So I mean, or some it describes their psychology. If someone's clear, I want to call that person Clara.
Ah, okay.
Pretty obvious on the note. I will very often go to other languages. I have a character in one script who he loses his head.
Right.
So I named him Sin-Tet, John Sin-Tet, which sin is without and tet is head. And so I'll take Spanish and French and throw two things together. It's kind of I like to be super on the nose, but sly enough so that it's not quite always detectable.
So if you think that's on the nose, you need to have a chat with George Lucas. Really, that's
he's a bit more on the nose, perhaps. A pub guide, for example. We have that one character named Rich, right? But he's an absolute dick. So we just took Richard and we turned it into Rich.
Oh, yeah.
But we still get the underlying idea is that this guy's a dick, and I think that there's a line of dialogue that even has that in there. Isn't it? Rich is such a dick. I think some character says that at one point. So I'll very often use like other languages. Or people that I know. That's the other thing I do is I'll just basic character on some. If I'm using a friend or an acquaintance as a character in a film as like the model for that character, then I'll just grab their name and just assume that they're not going to pick up on it. So
obviously, only do this with the good characters.
Yeah,
never the evil ones. Yeah,
the evil ones have to be, I don't know, dark names. Like Darth Vader sounds like such a dark name, doesn't it? I don't know. How do you think he came up with Darth Vader? Was he?
Yes. For a long time, it was the London A to Z was my great source of names.
Oh, yeah.
Because you could just, you flick to the back of the A to Z, you got that big, thick index, and you could flick to any random page and find somebody's interesting name.
Yeah.
There. The Gazetteer is your friend, isn't it? when coming up with names.
Like gaze and tear. I like another one that we did together was pretty good. I liked the way I think you came up with it. We started out with Some Bloke, and we came up with a character named Simon Block. Oh, he's just some bloke.
Yes.
Simon
He's
Block.
just some bloke. Yes, you're right.
Which was an awesome name. And I thought, that's usually the way you stumble on it, is I take some word that describes them and then I turn that into their name. And sometimes I have to use, French or Spanish, or maybe I'll learn another language someday or figure out some other names and just change it a little bit. So I think that's the best way. And I think it has to help the writer. And it could be something as simple as A, B, C, D, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to keep it clear for you while you're writing a script. But I think it also, for me, I'm looking for a name that, captures the character well enough, but also gives me a little detail that I can remember about this character. So that's probably the way I work. How about yourself?
Well, I have written quite a lot of Indian scripts, and I'm not super familiar with Indian names.
Yeah.
So what I did a long time ago was I downloaded a massive list of Indian baby names from the internets. So a big list of Indian baby names for girls and Indian baby names for boys, and they're alphabetized. And because of the way that the software works, so I, like everybody else, use Final Draft.
Same.
And you can tab and just type a letter, and it will come up with all of the characters whose name begins with that letter. So it will try and predict what it is you're going to type.
Yeah.
So I will try and limit myself
to
giving each main character a name that begins with a different letter.
Yeah.
So I've got up to 26 now here, so I know I can just tab.
Yeah.
I can just tab A, and then I can tab B, tab C, and I'll get each of the characters, and I'll gradually go through the alphabet, because I find it a bit tedious. If you've got two characters whose names both begin with ST, then you've got to type 3 letters when you want their character name to come up for dialogue, and that really slows me down. That's like that cramps my style,
Jimmy.
So I will.
I just have to. That is brilliant, and I know you're an anesthetist, but that is surgical, my friend. That is brilliant, because I have one script where there's a Peter, there's a Paul, and there's a Perry, and I don't know. I thought I was trying to make a folk singer joke or something like that, but I had these 3 characters, and inevitably I'd start misspelling them too. So then you get Perry with EARY or RRY, and then you get Peter and Pater, and awful. So
I remember when we were at film school together, actually reading a script where I think there was 3 characters, and the characters were called Tina, Anita, and Anna.
Oh, God.
Something like that. When we were reading the script, it was just impossible to tell who was speaking. They've all got this basically the same name.
Yeah.
When you're when you're reading at script speed, they just look exactly the same. Who's speaking now? And
all this sounds so pedestrian, but it's actually so important when you have people reading scripts and people producing scripts, because they really need to see how distinct the characters are. And I'm just going to make a quick plug for Apple and the Macintosh again, because this past
weekend, they
weekend,
should be paying us for this.
Final Draft went right from my old piece of crap computer, just seamlessly went right over to the new computer, and it's so wonderful. Passed the grandma test. Both Final Draft and Apple. Thank you.
You know what they say? It just works.
It just works. I like it.
I love it when it just works, and sometimes still it just works. It does just work sometimes. There is a degree of nominative determinism that you kind of see in scripts and in real life. So I remember when I was a medical student, I had to work. I did like a 4-week attachment under a surgeon who was a urologist. So he was like a you know what a urologist does. This is to do with helping people. The guy will help you pee.
My father used to call them pipe men.
But he was called Mr. Waterfall. From the very moment he entered medical school, everybody knew what he was going to do because it was written right there on the on the form.
Yeah.
In the same way, in my first anaesthetic job, one of the other anaesthetists in my department was Dr. Death.
Oh God.
But it was Death was how she insisted on pronouncing it. It was DE''ATH. But yeah, she was a lovely woman, very good anaesthetist. Oh my God! But change your name. That would be my advice.
Oh boy. That is, I love that. Nominative determinism, is that what you call it?
Nominative determinism.
Brilliant. Wow. This has been a good popcorn counter for you.
I've learned a lot.
I'm just tagging along. My God, that's a good one.
Oh, the popcorn's ready.
Oh, good.